Captain Jackson Creed's voice thundered through the auditorium as he marched forward, chest lifted high while he loudly paraded his supposed Special Forces credentials, closing in on the quiet woman waiting alone near the stage. He jabbed a finger at her, ridiculing how she stood there wordless and plain, showing no badges or markings of any kind. Then, with 400 Marines watching, he threw a full-power punch driven purely by his ego. Mara Lorne didn't flinch. She caught his wrist midair and cracked it cleanly with a single precise motion that echoed across the hall. If you think real respect comes from actions, type honor below. The entire room was filled to the brim. 400 Marines crowded into a joint briefing at Ironvale Base on a warm Tuesday morning near the end of September. Sunlight cut through the tall rectangular windows, casting sharp, stretched shadows over long rows of perfectly aligned folding chairs. She stayed near the sidewall in basic tactical gear: black cargo pants with reinforced knees, a gray-fitted shirt, no rank, no patches, no name tape, nothing at all. Most Marines figured she worked logistics or admin, quiet enough to overlook, leaning against the wall with her arms loosely folded and her eyes half shut like she might fall asleep from pure boredom. When she stepped toward the stage to test the projector cables, weaving carefully around the tangled cords, a young Marine leaned toward his buddy and whispered, "New tech staff." His friend shrugged. Maybe some off-base IT contractor, too athletic for that. Maybe PT staff. No one paid her real attention until the captain shoved through the double doors. Captain Jackson Creed, 6'2", broad-chested, with that parade ground bark. His ego had long surpassed his actual skill set, and he was known for hijacking every conversation with claims that he was more trained, more educated, and more capable than anyone around him. He'd taken a basic recon course 3 years earlier and still talked about it non-stop. When he swept his eyes across the room, he spotted her adjusting cables and scoffed loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Why is a civilian at our training event?" She didn't respond. She clicked the remote, flipped through blank slides, and calmly returned to her place by the wall. That alone irritated him. He stomped toward her, each step smacking sharply against the tile. Marines in the first row shifted, sensing trouble rolling in. "You're not supposed to be here, sweetheart," he sneered. "This is Special Forces level instruction, looking for finance staff." She looked at him once, just once, her face empty of fear, irritation, or anything else. "Can you even throw a punch?" "You look like you've never fought anyone," he barked, raising his voice to spark a few uneasy chuckles. She stayed silent. That silence lit his ego on fire, and he spun around to address the entire room, shouting so every corner heard him. "I'm Special Forces," Captain Jackson Creed boasted, rolling his shoulders back like he was on stage. "I finished advanced combat training at Ravenfort and Camp Alderbrook. I could outclass anyone in here, even little Miss Quiet over there." A few Marines forced awkward laughs. Others stared at the floor, while a grizzled sergeant in the third row slowly shook his head, already knowing a disaster was seconds away. But Creed wasn't done yet. He wanted to crush her dignity completely, loudly, in a way the entire room would remember. He lifted his hand high, palm wide, clearly aiming to slap her across the face in front of everyone watching. Someone yelled, "Sir, don't!" But he swung anyway, fast, smug, utterly convinced she couldn't react. He guessed wrong. Before his arm made it halfway down, Mara Lorne shifted. It was a tiny, razor-precise movement, clean and efficient, wasting nothing. She caught his wrist between 2 fingers and a thumb. Not a grab, not a struggle, just perfect pressure on the nerve point under the skin. The room fell into dead silence. Even he froze mid-strike, stunned that she stopped his momentum like it weighed nothing. His eyes snapped wide a moment before she rolled her hips, pressed lightly into his elbow, and turned her torso with exact leverage. Crack! The sound ripped through the auditorium like a rifle going off indoors, sharp, final, sickening. Captain Jackson Creed dropped to his knees instantly, screaming as his wrist bent in a direction no wrist should ever bend. Gasps ripped through the hall. Some Marines shot to their feet. Others flinched backward. A sergeant muttered urgently, "That wasn't just a break. That was surgical." Controlled. She let go of him gently, almost politely, lowering his arm to his lap without adding more pain. No flexing, no attitude, no triumph. Mara simply stepped back 2 calm, even paces, hands relaxed at her sides, breathing steady, expression unreadable. Creed, drenched in sweat and ghost pale, tried to stand, but collapsed again as his legs gave out and shock overtook him. What are you?" he wheezed, spit collecting at his lips. For the first time that morning, she spoke. Quiet, steady, completely level. Someone you should have respected from the beginning. Marines traded wide-eyed looks, trapped in a silence so heavy it felt like the whole room forgot to breathe. She walked to the stage, reattached the projector cables, adjusted the screen, and began organizing the presentation, as if nothing unusual had happened. Creed whimpered on the floor while medics rushed in with equipment. Marines whispered frantically, "Who is she? What unit? How did she move like that? I didn't even see it happen. She wrecked him with 2 fingers." Then Colonel Ronan Stroud stepped through the side door, glanced at the injured captain, then at Mara calmly sorting slides, and stiffened immediately. "Ma'am," he barked, snapping a flawless salute. Shocked murmurs rolled through the hall like thunder. His voice carried something rare in uniform, genuine fear wrapped with deep respect. He held the salute until she gave a small nod, only then dropping his hand. When arrogance slams into true mastery, the result can't be argued. For more moments like this, follow Captain Joe's stories. Colonel Stroud guided Mara Lorne to the center of the stage, then faced the Marines with a tone still firm and authoritative, but carrying unmistakable reverence. "You need to understand exactly who you just watched move," he said. Medics rolled Captain Jackson Creed out on a stretcher, his face locked in agony and humiliation. No jokes now, no smirks, no snickering. The colonel tapped the first slide that appeared on the massive screen behind her. Advanced Close Quarters Instructor, Tier 1 program. The entire hall gasped at once, like wind rushing across a field. "She," he continued slowly, "is the reason half of your CQB drills even exist in the manuals you study." Shock rippled again. She wrote the breaching entry doctrine you learned in infantry school. She trained the close combat instructors at Blackridge. She developed the pressure point program the Marines still use. She created the threat evaluation systems used by Force Recon. She wasn't just Tier 1. She operated far past that line. Mara Lorne waited behind the wooden podium until the room cooled into full silence, then stepped forward and spoke with steady composure. "I'm here to assess how you respond under pressure in real-time scenarios." A rigid tension rolled across the rows as Marines suddenly became acutely aware of every decision they'd made since walking into the auditorium. She observed them with calm, clinical precision, the way a surgeon studies damaged tissue. Most of you stayed seated when you sensed violence brewing. Some of you laughed when aggression targeted someone you assumed was weaker. A few of you tried to intervene verbally, but none of you acted physically. She paused, letting her words settle like weight sinking into deep water. Only 3 of you moved to protect someone you believed stood no chance. Her gaze swept slowly across the hall, and Marines straightened unconsciously beneath it. Strength, she said, isn't about throwing the first hit or throwing the hardest one. Real strength is having the discipline not to strike at all. A respectful hush draped over the room like early morning fog. She walked them through how misreading an opponent gets people killed in tight urban combat, how ego blinds awareness during chaotic operations, how silence on a real battlefield is often the loudest warning, and how judging capability by appearance leads to fatal tactical errors. The Marines listened as if she were handing them glimpses of their futures carved in blood. She outlined scenarios, ambushes in Fallujah, where the quiet fighters proved deadlier than the loud ones, narrow hallway fights where technique crushed brute strength, moments where a single heartbeat of hesitation wiped out entire teams, and split-second instincts that saved dozens. She displayed footage of training failures where arrogance turned lethal. She presented statistics showing how many combat losses came from assumptions instead of preparation. She demonstrated a technique on a volunteer so quickly the room gasped again. After 30 minutes of precise breakdowns and flawless demonstrations, someone finally voiced the question everyone had been avoiding. "Ma'am, what's your actual role in the military?" Mara answered without pride or delay. "I'm not part of the core units. I train the people you call special forces." A heavy quiet slammed over the room. Even Marines with multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan sat straighter, suddenly aware of how small their service seemed next to that truth. Gunnery sergeants who'd fought straight through Fallujah pulled their shoulders back, and staff sergeants with Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars stared at Mara Lorne with raw respect. She continued evenly, "I've trained Delta teams at Bragg, SEAL Team 6 instructors at Black Ridge, Marine Raiders at Camp Arden, and Air Force pararescue units at Kirtland." She let that reality drift over them like settling dust. When they need something new, something advanced, something that keeps operators alive, they come to me. She tapped the next slide, revealing pages of credentials, master-level certifications in 17 martial arts, deployments to classified locations, thousands of elite operators trained, 0 training deaths. She ended the briefing with a quiet, unwavering command: "Rise." All 400 Marines stood instantly, chairs scraping sharply across the floor. She gave a single nod, the closest thing to approval anyone would ever receive from her. When the session concluded, the Marines formed a long line. Not for pictures, not for autographs, not to flatter her, but to apologize, to thank her sincerely, to offer respect she had earned long before today. She didn't bask in it, didn't smile, didn't pose. She simply nodded at each Marine who stepped forward, acknowledging them with calm restraint. One by one came the low, remorseful confessions. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for laughing." Marines moved past her offering soft, shaken apologies. "Ma'am, I was wrong. Ma'am, thank you for the reminder. Ma'am, I should have acted sooner. Ma'am, I misjudged you." She answered each with a small nod or a quiet "understood" or "learn from it," nothing more. No long speeches, no dramatic clearing of the air. Just simple, honest acknowledgement. Near the exit, Colonel Ronan Stroud stepped toward her privately. "Ma'am, I'll handle disciplinary action for Captain Jackson Creed. Court-martial, demotion, maybe separation." "No," she said, calm but absolute, stopping him cold. He already learned what he needed. Her tone carried no resentment, no desire for revenge, only the weary wisdom forged from years of real fights, from watching young troops fall because of one bad call, from knowing that pain teaches what punishment never will, and humiliation can reshape a swollen ego far better than confinement. Mara gathered her materials, unplugged the projector with practiced efficiency, and headed toward the door with steady composure. Marines automatically formed a rigid line along the hallway, standing at attention not because anyone ordered it, but because she had earned something deeper, unforced honor. At the doorway, just before she stepped into the blazing sun, a nervous private barely 19, fresh out of Ironshore Depot, whispered, "Ma'am, how did you move like that?" She paused, turned slightly, and met his eyes that had already seen more loss and sacrifice than they should. "Practice," she answered simply. "Thousands of hours every single day. No shortcuts." Then she added softly, "Almost all of it is respect for the craft. Never use it for ego, only for protection." With that, she walked into the California light and slipped away like a fading shadow returning to quiet places. The young private straightened, knowing that moment would follow him through his entire career and long after. For stories where quiet action reveals real strength, follow Captain Joe's stories.